Tasmania's Environment Protection Authority is charged with assessing and regulating industry in the state. But there are claims the environmental watchdog is failing to do its job. A group of residents in one Hobart suburb has been complaining about emissions from a nearby brickworks factory. Linda Hunt investigates.
Last April, May, it was particularly bad. There was black smoke coming out of there. There's a bit down the bottom where the kiln leaks. A few days there was dust coming out of every bit of the building.
You could feel something in your eyes, in your nose and burning your throat.
The residents are angry and they feel as if they've been ignored for a long time.
Newtown is one of Hobart's oldest suburbs. Many of its leafy streets are lined with Federation-style cottages. But the residential suburb, only minutes from Hobart, is also home to one of the country's oldest brickworks.
A week after I moved in, I noticed an annoying droning, like a fan had been left on noise 24/7. I noticed the dust. There were dust clouds coming out of there. The house is always dusty. When children visited, they were sneezing constantly. The black smoke coming out of the stack. The truck movements.
Belinda McIntosh moved into her house near the K&D Brickworks in Giblin Street in 2005. For 6 years, she's amassed a collection of photos, videos and paperwork detailing what she believes are environmental breaches.
There were just so many instances last year, and over the years I've been, every time something had happened I would contact the EPA and just be basically told that condescendingly told how a brick was made and that it's a 24/7 operation and that they have existing rights.
The Brickworks has been manufacturing fired clay bricks since 1850. K&D has been producing bricks and selling products at the site for 70 years.
We did come around several times before we bought the property and realised, yes, there will be trucks, but I had no idea that there would be 24/7 noise from the kiln.
We were approached by a number of residents who'd had concerns over a long period of time, and they'd contacted the council, contacted the EPA, done quite a lot of work at trying to get something done about it and hadn't had any luck.
Those residents had been conducting their own research. Freedom of information documents obtained by them and given to the ABC detail complaints recorded over decades. The complaints were sent to the Environment Department, the EPA and the Hobart City Council.
The residents had been incredibly diligent about trying to find out what the situation was. They'd done freedom of information requests and spoken with council officers and established that the documents that regulated this operation were an environmental management plan from 1991 and a licence to operate from 1995, and that no review of those documents had happened since that time.
The licence to operate states the environmental management plan shall be reviewed at 3 yearly intervals. It appears it wasn't until November 2009 that the EPA discovered the oversight. An interdepartmental email between environmental officers dated November the 20th states,
"I had, name blanked, on the phone again this morning. She was in tears. She said that when she went outside this morning there was soot all over her car. Some of it burnt the paint. She feels that the council and the EPA are not doing enough to keep these people in line."
The file note was forwarded to the then Director Warren Jones. He replies,
"If there are soot emissions of the nature described, then this is a serious matter and we should be taking action to prevent it. Obviously, the brickworks also needs to be compliant with other conditions in the permit."
Later that day, Environmental Officer Damien Jones visits the site, accompanied by K&D Manager Peter Nilsson. His report, written 5 days later, notes,
DJ asked PN if stack emissions testing had been carried out. PN stated not as a regular thing. DJ asked PN if there was any scrubbing or filter equipment attached to the stack and was told none was attached. DJ also raised the issue that the company had not fulfilled their permit condition to provide an environmental management plan review every 3 years from 1995.
K&D declined the ABC's request for an interview. In a statement, the company said it has always adhered to EPA requirements.
The Environmental Protection Authority and the council have a heightened responsibility where there's residences in such close proximity to an industrial activity. The environmental management plan included provisions for fairly regular review, so the fact that that hadn't happened for 15 or more years was a concern.
Belinda McIntosh says she can't understand why the EMP wasn't reviewed in 2005 when she first started complaining.
If they'd looked at it then and realised it was out of date, the measures they're taking now to solve their pollution problems would have been all over and done with.
In a statement, the current EPA Director, Alex Sharp, said the requirements for EMP reviews should have been enforced, but appears to have been overlooked as the site has generally been seen as a relatively low-risk site. He says the finalisation of an Environment Protection Notice, or EPN, will significantly upgrade the site permit conditions. The EPN was finally issued on October the 12th this year. It states the grounds upon which it is issued, including that pollutants emitted in the form of noise, particulate matter and fluorine compounds, if not properly managed and monitored, are likely to result in serious environmental harm, material environmental harm or environmental nuisance occurring. But it comes too late for some residents. Mary, who doesn't want to be identified, sold her Newtown house last year and moved out of the suburb.
It's a toxic environment that I chose not to keep living in because it was affecting my health and my daughter's health.
She claims they developed breathing problems within a few weeks of moving near the brickworks. A doctor diagnosed her with asthma.
I have a letter from the doctor stating that it is most likely due to living near the brickworks, but he would have to have more information to say categorically that it was.
Tasmania's Public and Environmental Health Service says it was alerted to the concerns of 2 residents in February 2010, but assessed there was no risk to public health.
And I've spoken to a lot of neighbours. A lot of rental neighbours move, especially with children, because of the dust issue. And a lot of people sell their house. A lot of people don't want to talk about it because they think maybe their property values will go down.
The Hobart City Council says the brickworks is classified as a Level 2 activity in a residential zone, so its activities are monitored and enforced by the state government. The EPA says a number of plant improvements have now been made. K&D says $400,000 has been spent. Equipment has been installed to reduce clay dust and sawdust emissions. Fluoride emissions from the kiln stack are being addressed by abatement equipment and improved testing. But the director admits that, despite implementation of a range of measures, complaints have continued to be received. This vision from residents was filmed after the EPN was issued on October the 12th.
At the end of the day, I don't think a classified noxious industry is appropriate in the residential area. And I've been looking elsewhere in Australia, and brickworks from the 1850s have been since turned into housing, parks, and they've moved to a more appropriate industrial area.